Hello, everyone, and I thank you for joining us here today for this webinar hosted by the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in association with Next Time. My name is Priya, and I work with the Netherlands Consulate in Mumbai as a Senior Policy Officer. Also with me here is our Healthcare Sector Lead, Ms. Ravleen Pal from the Netherlands Embassy. This is the first of the series of webinars we have organized. And today our focus is on the opportunities available in India's robust healthcare sector and how Maharashtra is an attractive destination for healthcare companies. After the webinar, you will receive a feedback form, which we kindly request you to complete and send it to us to determine the next topic of our webinar and how we can assist in future collaborations between India and the Netherlands. We hope this webinar is of interest to you and the information shared and learned here helps us in furthering our trade relationships with you all. I will be your moderator for today. Before we begin, please note that you're in listen mode only. If you have any questions, please share them with us through the chat box on the control panel at any time during this session. We will address your queries at the end of the webinar or in writing afterwards if the time runs out. The Indian healthcare industry has grown at a rapid pace over the last decade and expected to continue its growth trajectory over the medium term. Factors like the prevalent dual disease burden, economic growth, rising awareness, and increased insurance penetration are key drivers of this growth. The government's incentives and policy reforms, coupled with the adoption of digital technology, offer tremendous investment opportunities for businesses across the sector. It is my pleasure to welcome our distinguished guests for our sessions today. We will formally introduce each one shortly. Unfortunately, Dr. Pradeep Vyas, Principal Secretary for Health and Public Welfare, was called in for a last-minute government meeting and hence he had to cancel his attendance here. I begin with introducing Mr. Marcel Flo. Marcel is our Counselor for Health, Welfare and Sport at the Netherlands Embassy in Delhi. Before this posting, he acted as a Program Manager, International Digital Health at the Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sports in the Netherlands and has held several positions in a broad variety of policy domains. Marcel served as a senior diplomat in Brussels and in Beijing. We then have with us Mr. Ravi Menon. Ravi is a senior business advisor, APAC Healthcare at Next Time. He holds over 38 years of international experience spanning across international markets, including India, Southeast Asia, Greater China, South Korea, and the Middle East in the pharmaceutical, medical devices, and consumer product industries. In his last role with Allergen, Ravi was the Vice President and Managing Director, India and Southeast Asia, based in the Asia Pacific Regional Office in Singapore. Our next panel member is Dr. Rakesh Sarwal. Sorry, sir. Dr. Salwar is a senior IAS officer and holds a doctorate degree in public health from the Johns Hopkins University, USA. He has served in the social sector in various capacities in the northeastern state of Tripura and the government of India. As advisor for health, he was instrumental in planning the 12th Fifth Five-Year Plan. From the Netherlands, we have with us here today Ms. Esther Vandelhuel. Esther has been working as Program Manager Asia for Netherlands Task Force Healthcare since 2019. In this role, she stimulates cooperation, trade, and innovation between Dutch life sciences and health organizations and their counterparts from across countries in Asia. And to complete our group of panelists, we have Mr. Radhakrishnan Kodakkal. Mr. Radhakrishnan is the Senior Director and Global R&D Leader for X-ray Imaging Business for Royal Philips. Radhakrishnan is responsible for the innovation strategy and product solutions development of the X-ray imaging business, including radiography, fluoroscopy, and mammography. He manages R&D centers across Germany, India, China, Sweden, and Brazil. He has successfully launched many new medical imaging products and solutions in the area of diagnostic X-ray, surgery C-arm, and cath lab. He has been associated with Philips for the last 20 years. I'll get things going by setting the context for today's event, highlighting some opportunities in the Indian healthcare ecosystem, and this will be followed by a Q&A session with our esteemed guests. I will now like to invite Marcel to give a brief about the Netherlands-India partnership.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you for this kind introduction, and welcome all. I'd like to start in 2015, so that's 5 years back, when Prime Minister Modi was meeting Prime Minister Rutte from the Netherlands, and they have been meeting since then on a yearly basis. And in this meeting, health was put on the agenda by Prime Minister Modi, and since then, in these yearly meetings, health has been a structural item on the agenda. Now that seemed not so obvious. I mean, countries far away and the complete different health systems. But if you zoom into the situation as we see it, we saw it in 2015 and we see it now, it's logical. There is logic behind it. First of all, why India could have been interested in the Netherlands? Well, the Netherlands is one of the best health systems in the world. I mean, it's acknowledged by all kinds of by surveys, and we have a very, very strong innovation system, as we published in the World Intellectual Property Report. I think over the weekend, the Netherlands scores 5. So that's one. It attracts a lot of attention, the way we organize health and healthcare in the Netherlands. Secondly, more in terms of shared interests, it has to do with global health. Health is no longer a local issue. Health is no longer a national issue. Health travels across the borders, as we see now with viruses, but we see it also with digital health, we see it with financing of health. Health it's one global community. We share interests in terms of health security issues, how to find answers to the next, what some people would qualify the slow pandemic of antimicrobial resistance. We have to fight and work together in terms of virology to see the next pandemic coming. We have a shared interest in pharmaceuticals, safe, affordable, part of universal healthcare in India, but also in the Netherlands, in Europe. In digital, as I said, India is now chair of the Global Digital Health Partnership, a small group of governments that do not only have an ambition to be the front runner in digital health, but also are actually taking up this leadership role. As was published in a Deloitte study 2 weeks ago, the Netherlands takes this lead in Europe, and we're very interested to work on this together with India. Now, India and the Netherlands see that private sector is very, very essential in taking health to the next level. To a large extent, healthcare provision is a logistical process that requires dedicated professionals and high-quality products. And so the question is more to do with how to organize the process in such a way that it's provided in the right time, at the right place, with the right kind of information. And in that respect, economic principles apply to healthcare as well. So the Netherlands and India, unlike some other countries, think we should not exclude private sector from the vertical health. On the contrary, we need to engage. We have, to a certain extent, the same vision on how to organize health. Government sets the rules, sets the framework in a landscape, and within this framework, there is ample room for private entrepreneurs to come up with creative solutions for the major challenges, societal challenges that we have. So government ensures access to public health infrastructure and is instrumental to guarantee that no one is left out. What's happening in India in the area of health? I said, well, maybe it's a revolution. History will judge on that, but at least we see a very, very strong evolution of what is going on in India. At the political level, we see much awareness. We see a lot of ambitions being articulated. We see major steps in financing, in connecting the fragmented or trying to connect the fragmented sector, developing healthcare provision. We see the Aadhaar system as a stepping stone for a health ID as part of the recently published National Digital Health Mission. We see the Ayushman Bharat scheme bringing healthcare to the 5 million poorest until the very, very last mile, which is so critical. Once again, I mean, by clever digital applications. And we see, very important as well, in India, we see acknowledgement of the need to step up spending. And we need that spending needs to go up fast. And unfortunately, this pandemic has been very, very clear in showing where India needs to improve its preparedness. We see this ambition not only at the level at the union level in Delhi, but we see it reflected in states and quite often at district level as well. So throughout the chain, we see ambition and we see awareness of the need to work together and to step forward. But the Dutch government, looking at India, developed a multi-annual strategy. We have identified 4 sustainable development goals with corresponding themes on where we will engage and focus with India for the next years. And that's agriculture, health, clean drinking water, sanitation, and climate action. And the whole network of the Netherlands in India, so that's the embassy, the consulate general in Mumbai, in Bangalore, the Netherlands business support offices, they all work together in this same direction. Because of course the major challenge in bringing about this change in healthcare has to do with implementation, and that's where the hard part is, of course. Now, if we move to the next slide, it translates this ambition translates to the for the Ministry of Health, at least in the Netherlands, into 3 priority areas within the public domain. So that's in addition to the support that we'd like to lend to developing and bridging in the life sciences and health sector. And of course, behind that is the bigger ambition to tap into the India potential. And those 3 areas are in the digital areas, applications, but also in terms of data standards and governance. Of course, pharmaceuticals, so important for India, but also for Europe and for the Netherlands. There are people who would say 40% of the pharmaceutical products in the Dutch pharmacies originate in India. So we're depending on each other, and at the same time, we understand that we have bigger dependencies that are not always that comfortable. And as I said, the issue of the health threats, as we face now during this pandemic, no one is safe until everybody is safe. So that means that we need to step up our cooperation in terms of fighting and predicting and preventing major outbreaks as we see it here. The developments in India are interesting for the Netherlands because of the economic opportunities, and we'll come to that later, but also because we can learn from India in terms of scaling up, because essentially that is what India is very, very good at, and that's what we learn. We need to connect in the digital health space, bringing together and making more and more health data available will transform healthcare, will learn us how to bring healthcare at an individual level, thereby bringing down the cost, the economic cost, but also the cost in terms of life perspective for individuals. We see India has a young tech-savvy population, so many engineers graduating every year, millions. I mean, we can only be jealous of that. That's and we need clever minds to bring health and healthcare to the next level. And we see, and I mean that all over the world, Indians, some of the brightest minds in the world were born in India. We see at the CEO level, the major tech firms in the world, so many Nobel Prize winners. We need to tap into this huge potential. And if we then focus on Maharashtra, we need, we need front runners. I mean, this is about a major change to happen. It will not happen overnight. It will take a long time. So we can call it a marathon. And in the marathon, we need the front runners to actually to give directions and also to set the pace. Maharashtra is important for us. The Netherlands is the 4th largest foreign director in India. With investments of $27 billion in the last few years. Maharashtra is an important economic trade partner for the Netherlands. 30% of foreign direct investment from the Netherlands is into Maharashtra. And we're very fortunate to have over 70 Dutch companies in Maharashtra being part of this rapid development. And of course, some front runners we do all know. Serum Institute, of course, which is based in the Netherlands as well. Some of you might not know, and has major plans for further expansion. And of course, India is very active in Pune, as we'll hear later. So I would say, but if you are interested to join this marathon, please do so. It's fascinating what is all happening. We see a lot of opportunities, and don't be shy. Don't try to disappear in somewhere in the pack, but try to really be in front and set the pace with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. I would now like to invite Ravi to give a brief overview of the Indian healthcare industry.
Thank you for that welcome, Priya, and a very warm welcome to all the participants of today's webinar. My goal is to provide you with a brief overview of the Indian healthcare industry and give you an overview of some of the key parameters that you might want to look at as you look at our market. So please move on to the next slide. In my talk today, I will briefly discuss some of the key healthcare indicators, the market size segments, and the growth drivers that we see in India. I'll also talk a little bit about some of the major initiatives that are helping to drive the opportunity in the healthcare market. And I will also share with you some details about government policy, both at the general level and also in Maharashtra, which is a state of special interest to the Netherlands companies. We do have an eminent speaker talk to you later about the Indian government policy in general about healthcare, and he will provide additional detail regarding that. Next slide, please. So this slide basically gives you at a snapshot some of the key healthcare indicators and infrastructure parameters within India, and I've also provided for your interest an overview of the comparison with the Netherlands. So as you can see from an infrastructure perspective, India is far behind Netherlands. So we are a developing country, and we have a considerable room for improvement in terms of the infrastructure. So if you look at doctor density, we have about 0.8 doctors per 1,000 population. Our healthcare expenditure as a percentage of GDP is only in the region of 4%, and of which a large portion is actually private, with government expenditure being under around 1.2, 1.3% of GDP. So that's low compared to close to 10% in the Netherlands, and that certainly has an impact on the infrastructure and facilities we have. In terms of hospital beds, and that the infrastructure needs to improve significantly. We have about 1.3 beds against Netherlands 3.2. So there's a big gap there that we need to work towards improving. And one particular problem that India has is that the citizens have a fairly large out-of-pocket expenditure on health. So about 65% of the healthcare expenditure comes from people's personal pockets, as against 10 to 11% in the Netherlands. So that's a very major area of concern, which the government is actively trying to bridge through a number of schemes that it has announced. Insurance has been growing rapidly in the country. And, the Ayushman Bharat scheme, which Marcel talked about, actually brought in the bottom half of the pyramid into the group. So there's about 500 million people who have now got covered under that insurance program. So we have, over 60% of the people getting some form of insurance coverage. But as you can see, there's still a large amount of out-of-pocket expenditure that we need to handle and make sure that, we bridge. Since we are a, underdeveloped market in many ways and underpenetrated in terms of healthcare services, the growth rate is high. It has been double-digit in the past many years, and I think we expect it to be a mid-teens growth for many years to come, given the requirements and improvement of penetration that we need. From a disease profile basis, the disease profile in India has changed rapidly. So today you have a very large share of non-communicable diseases, which is your NCDs. So these include your cardiovascular illnesses, respiratory illnesses, oncology, diabetes and other metabolic disorders. So we have we have a NCD burden which is beginning to look like the West, and this is very different from what it was 30 years ago. But we still have a very large burden of communicable diseases, neonatal, maternal, and child health issues to deal with. So we have a kind of a double burden of both rapidly growing NCDs, as well as a fairly significant continuing burden of communicable and maternal diseases. So that's the challenge that India needs to deal with. The good news, I think, is the growth aspect of it, but and the opportunities this kind of environment provides. Next slide, please. So this gives you an approximate sizing of the healthcare industry. And if you look at the right side of the graph, so in 2019, we were just under $170 billion in size. And projections which were made at that point of time indicated that we would somewhere be in the range of $350 to $400 billion by 2024. So that's a very healthy CAGR, an expected growth rate in excess of 15%, 17 to 19% is what we expected. This, of course, has had a setback in terms of the COVID pandemic, and maybe, depending on how soon we come out of the pandemic, we would probably be looking at a year lag in terms of reaching that market size. But, as we do come out of the pandemic, I think for various characteristics and features that we'll talk about a little later, I think the market will continue to be attractive and grow. We received approximately $25 billion of FDI from 2000 to 2019. And on the left side, you can see the different segments in the industry. So a bulk of it, well over 70% is healthcare delivery, the hospitals, clinics, and the delivery centers. Pharmaceuticals is just under 20%, so that's a large part of our healthcare industry. Whereas in medical devices and diagnostics, including areas like e-health, which are now getting a lot of interest and activity, are still significantly underpenetrated. But the flip side of that is I think you have a lot of room for growth, both in the medtech and in the diagnostic space, as well as in the e-health space. So those are actually very exciting areas for future. The pharmaceutical industry, on the other hand, is a much more mature industry. And as you probably know, in terms of generics and vaccines, India is among the largest supplier of these products to the world. So that's a very well mature segment as now. Next slide, please. So this gives you a brief snapshot of some of the growth drivers. So clearly, of course, I'm not talking here about the economic drivers, but the growing middle classes, economic growth, those are the underlying features which will enable growth in the market. But in addition to that, I think the shifting disease burden to NCDs with longer treatment horizons, that's a very major growth driver for the industry. The growth of insurance is certainly a very large driver. So as government expenditure goes up, which has been committed, and the insurance penetration goes up, I think there'll be a lot more money available to spend on quality goods and services, which people are demanding today. So there are rising wellness concerns in the public. People are looking for more focus on patient-centric care. They're looking for value in what they spend on. So many of these are working as significant growth drivers for improvement in healthcare delivery, in improvement of products and services, and also in improving access and reach and quality of life for the larger populations. So and I know there's a particular interest in e-health and technology in the Netherlands, and so some of these factors here I've talked about are primarily from the e-health perspective. So we are seeing now a rapid adoption of EHR solutions. So Marcel did mention that recently the government announced a national digital health mission, which is a tremendous initiative to bring about greater speed of adoption of e-health initiatives, and that will, I think, accelerate growth in that area. There's widespread implementation of cloud computing, which can provide better data access to both patients and healthcare providers. There is, as I mentioned, the increasing requirement and a customer voice asking for patient-centric technologies. Mobile phone penetration in India is extremely high and has grown very significantly in the last 10 to 15 years. And this will help bring all the mobile device enabled applications into the health space. And people are looking as to how they can manage their NCDs better, reduce mortality, and improve quality of life with these diseases which can impact you for the long term. Next slide, please. So a very brief look at the Ayushman Bharat program, which is a government initiative launched about 2 years ago. And this is really an initiative which puts India on the path to universal health coverage. So that's a track, I think, which India is firmly committed to be on. And it has two legs. The one of them is the creation, and we already have many of these, but it's the creation of well-funded, well-established 150,000 health and wellness centers. Now, these will form the backbone of primary healthcare in the country, and will be located geographically dispersed throughout the country. So that's the place which will serve as the first entry point to a lot of the people in the lower middle classes and lower income segments who can go there, and then based on referrals will be taken to the tertiary and secondary hospitals and more advanced care facilities. So there one is the primary healthcare centers which will manage normal ailments, the normal NCDs, provide medication, provide preliminary diagnostic facilities. And then you have what is called the PMJ program, which is the healthcare insurance, which now today covers approximately 500 million people. And these 500 million people get approximately $7,100 worth of medication, of treatment cost reimbursement in a year for the family, which from an Indian perspective is not insignificant, and it can be extremely valuable. It will prevent a large section of people from slipping into severe economic stress because of healthcare illnesses, and it will help them avail of secondary and tertiary hospitalization facilities. So this scheme covers about 1,500 procedures, which is being revised constantly. And as of date, we have approximately 11 million beneficiaries from this, and there's been over $2 billion of claims which have been raised under this. So this is a very major initiative, and this, I think, has a spiral and a effect on the rest of the population as well. So you are seeing better insurance programs being announced for the middle classes, upper middle classes. There is today a pilot study which is looking at covering what we believe is a missing middle segment in terms of health coverage. And we heard briefly about the digital health mission, which will actually provide a unique health ID to all citizens. And a combination of this, I think, is what will help the market grow substantially. Moving on to the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about the general policy incentives from the government, and I think you'll hear Dr. Rakesh speak much more about this. But on the left side, you are seeing some key policy initiatives from the government. So I think what all of you should know is that there are very liberal foreign direct investment limits in this sector. There was a significant change in the national health policy, which was announced in 2017, which gave focus and priority to the healthcare sector. And the government is now committed to growing the healthcare expenditure as a percentage of GDP. So there is currently talk of quickly raising the healthcare expenditure as a percentage to GDP from about 1.2, 1.3% to 2.5%, which will bring in a very substantial amount of money into the healthcare pool. Medical devices are now well regulated from 2017. So that actually puts a better trajectory on how these are governed, and also, makes it a level playing field. There is the recently announced National Digital Health Mission, which provides a trajectory for growth of e-health, and there's the data protection bill. So I think you can clearly see the number of policy initiatives being taken by the government, which highlights the importance that healthcare is accorded from the government. And supported by these policies, we are seeing a number of incentives for investment in the healthcare sector that the government has announced. So let me begin first by the significant change in corporate income tax rates for new manufacturing companies. So this was announced earlier this year, where we now have a corporate tax rate of 15%, which makes it comparable to some of the best tax rates in the world. So that's a major change in terms of that. There is a whole group of production-linked incentives which were announced in March 2020, amounting to approximately under $2 billion. And these are linked to the production which takes place in these new manufacturing facilities. There are incentives in the region of 20 to 25% for the capex investments, the capital expenditures in plant and machinery. There's an incentive plan for APIs that is of importance. And there are tax exemptions for domestically managed medtech products. And there is also a preference given in government and public procurement for goods that are manufactured in India to support some of the investments that are happening in the manufacturing sector. So there are a large number of government policy initiatives that are which the government has announced. Next slide, please. Many of these are, emerging trends which are leading to a number of opportunities. And I just wanted to talk very briefly about some of the e-health related areas. So we are finding a tremendous growth in telehealth and telemedicine post the COVID pandemic. So lots of major hospitals are now meeting, significant portions of their patient populations through virtual discussions, telehealth meetings. We are seeing greater digital customer engagement. We are seeing the penetration of AI, machine learning in various technology and similar technologies in the medtech space. There is increased focus on connected care and disease-focused applications, and we see from an opportunity and output basis, we've seen a lot of aggregators and online providers emerge in the sector, including online pharmacies, senior citizen care. Many of these are coming in. There's a plethora of health apps which are aimed to improve personal health, fitness, and preventive care. Health information management is a huge area. Diagnostics, telehealth, and medtech as a whole. The med devices are all exciting opportunities which we believe companies can avail of in India. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, we don't have the gentleman from Maharashtra speak today, so I will try and cover a little bit about the background of Maharashtra, and I'm sure the speaker from Philips will be able to add much more to this in terms of color as to Maharashtra. So Maharashtra is a state on the western coast of India. It's a large state. It's the third largest state in the country. So India has a federal structure where you have a number of states which are close to about 30 states in the country. So Maharashtra is one of the largest states and also one of the most industrialized states in the country. It approximately occupies about 10% of the geography of the country, and it contributes about 15% to the Indian economy. So it's a very well industrialized, economically prosperous state, and therefore it's extremely important. As you can see from this chart, it receives a very large share of the FDI. So that's $7.2 billion, which we are seeing from March 18 to October 19. It contributes about 20% of the Indian pharmaceutical industry output, and there are over 5,000 manufacturing devices, pharmaceutical manufacturing device units in the state. The state has the largest number of US FDA approved manufacturing plants in the country. It's the largest producer of vaccines in the country. So Serum Institute, which I think is the largest global producer of vaccine, is located in Pune, which is in Maharashtra. There are 4 existing pharmaceutical manufacturing hubs in the state, and the labor costs are very reasonable. It's about 60% lower than that in the US. It's also a very good place for R&D, science and technology. So we have over 10 R&D centers which are located in Maharashtra state. There are 2 international airports and ports, and there are from an environment management, it's well equipped with common effluent treatment plants and similar infrastructure availability. So that's kind of something very important for you to remember. The next slide, please. And this is just a pictorial snapshot of some of the many players who are located in Maharashtra. So on the pharmaceutical side, you have Abbott, GSK, you have Indian players like Sun, you have Pfizer, Sanofi, Novartis, Hikal, Emcure. There are a huge host of companies. And of course, you have Philips on the medtech, which is a giant in the sector. I think you have Siemens also located there. A number of companies are located in the Maharashtra belt. So that's kind of on Maharashtra. So that kind of brings me to the end of my session. So in the interest of time, I'm going to pause and stop at this end. So we will send you material about Next Time as a company, which you can have a look at. And I'd like to hand it back to Priya for the next speakers. Thank you, Priya.
Thank you, Ravi. I would now like to invite Dr. Sarwal to share his insights on opportunities in Indian healthcare industry and what are the initiatives taken by the Indian government in attracting foreign direct investment in the healthcare sector. Anybody from Next Time there?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Sarwal, we can hear you now.
Am I?
Yes, Dr. Sarwal, we can
Thank you
hear
very
you
much.
now.
So very distinguished colleague, panelists, and other listeners and participants in this webinar. I'm delighted at this webinar being held at the initiative of the Netherlands government for promoting investment in the healthcare sector in India in general and Maharashtra in particular. Now, Netherlands is one of the largest investors, as we all know, both in terms of FDI as well as trade. It's one of the largest traders in India, a large part of which is in the healthcare sector. And health remains and continues to be one of the priority sectors identified by the government of Netherlands. And given India's need and the strengths in the healthcare sector, there is a natural synergy and convergence in the areas in which the investment and collaboration can take place. I'll shortly elaborate on that. The Indian FDI regime has been greatly liberalized, where in the case of the greenfield projects, 100% FDI is given by the automatic route. And in the case of and in the case of brownfield projects, up to 74%, it is given through the automatic route. Anything beyond is approved on a case-to-case basis. So the sectors under which the FDI can be done will include hospitals, general healthcare, medical devices, biotechnology, another important and a sunrise field, and pharmaceuticals, as well as insurance. So these are the broad areas in which the government of India promotes direct FDI. And the business environment has been looking up for some time now. In the last ranking released by the World Bank, we moved up 14 points. We are now at India's rank is 63. And states are at the forefront of this effort of the country to promote the ease of doing business. Now, the strengths. Now, the talk of the healthcare sector in India. With a large population, 1.38 billion size of population, the healthcare sector in India has got a new direction with the healthcare policy of 2017, as has already been said. And we have had a significant reduction in maternal mortality, infant mortality, control of communicable diseases. And the health manpower is one area where, despite our diversity, a lot of investment and a lot of activity has happened. Despite these successes, Ayushman Bharat is another success where 100 million households and 10 million beneficiaries have been assisted under a national digital health platform, which was just talked about. Now, given these strengths and the opportunities which arise in creating more beds, the more medical training infrastructure, the investment in pharma, in APIs, in medical devices, as well as the pharma parks, the insurance sector, the diagnostics, and the IT sector. There are opportunities for investors from Netherlands in these areas where we can collaborate. Now, I'll just talk in some detail about a very interesting scheme, a productivity-linked incentive scheme, recently notified by the Department of Pharmaceuticals, under which there are 41 formulations which have been identified, in which the country would like to become self-sufficient, and greenfield investment in these formulations within a window of 120 days, if they are applied, will be eligible for a subsidy of the range of 5 to 20% of the incremental sales. So this is a limited time offer, and I would invite the attention of the investors here to visit the scheme guidelines on the web page of the Ministry of Pharma, which also has a similar guideline for the medtech devices, where also the investments are to be encouraged under a similar principle of incremental sales being subsidized by the government to varying degrees. The second big thing, which I think, given the initial address that we all heard with Mr. Michael Floor, is the area of experience of the two countries in health systems development and the practice of public health. Now, this, to my mind, given that India has eliminated polio, plague, and is in the forefront of the fight against other communicable diseases, and is facing a double burden of disease, has a mixed model public health system, public and private. I think there is a lot of expertise and experience that has built up in India. Netherlands, certainly, as was mentioned, is in the one of the best health systems in the world. So I believe that our universities and our institutes can collaborate together to find solutions to our problems and share the learnings from each other. So with these few words, I would again thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. And I think that we would be collaborating with both the industry and the institutions from Netherlands on a larger scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh, for your valuable insights. I would now like to request Esther to give her insights on the life sciences and health initiatives and PPPs to boost productive infrastructure in healthcare and best practices.
Yes, thank you, Priya. So pleased to be a speaker at this webinar, and well, in the next 5 minutes, I will introduce to you the Dutch life sciences and healthcare landscape. Next slide, please. So again, my name is Esther van de Heuvel. I'm a program manager at Task Force Healthcare. My specific focus is Asia. And before we start, just a brief introduction about our organization, Task Force Healthcare. It's a non-profit independent platform for the Dutch life sciences and healthcare sector. And we are already active since 1996. And it's our mission to improve healthcare together by connecting the right people within the Netherlands, but also with the rest of the world. And we present and position the Netherlands abroad, and more concrete, we support Dutch life science and healthcare organizations from startup to multinational and knowledge institutes with their international ambitions. And we do this by organizing, for example, trade missions with specific focus on the life science and healthcare sector. But we also conduct market research, and we always do this in close collaboration with the Dutch Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sports, and of course also the embassies and the consulates. Next slide, please. If we take a closer look at the Dutch life sciences and healthcare landscape, it is one of the most concentrated clusters in the world, with almost 3,000 life science and healthcare companies and research organizations, 8 university medical centers and 12 universities engaged in biomedical research, all within a 120 miles radius. And more specifically, it's good to mention that the Netherlands has an excellent research and innovation portfolio in a number of specific areas, such as vaccination, antibiotic resistance, and polio. I think Marcel Floor also mentioned a few of them. And within these fields, the Netherlands and India are already quite actively collaborating. But of course, it's very interesting to see how we can further increase this collaboration. Also, something to mention is that the Netherlands is consistently ranked in the top 3 of the Euro Health Consumer Index, which is the leading comparison for assessing the performance of national healthcare systems. So if we look at the top sector, life sciences and health, the top sector is one of the 9 top sectors in the Netherlands. And these top sectors are designated by the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy. And they are specifically selected to, because of their ability to contribute to the global societal challenges. And the top sector, life science and health, entails a very broad scope of disciplines, from pharmaceuticals to medtech, from healthcare industry, infrastructure to vaccination. And it's the mission of the Dutch top sector, life science and health, to improve the quality of life while restraining the costs of healthcare. And the top sector also really encourages public-private partnerships to valorize innovation. And on the right side of the screen, you can see an example of this public-private innovation partnerships. In the Netherlands, we have around 11 science parks where healthcare providers like hospitals, together with universities and companies, are all working on smart solutions for the life sciences and healthcare sector. Next slide, please. More specifically, the ambitions of the Dutch life sciences and healthcare sector are specified in the Knowledge and Innovation Agenda. As you can read, the central mission is that in 2014, all citizens in the Netherlands live at least 5 years longer in good health, and that the health inequalities between high and low socio-economic populations have been reduced with 30%. And this mission is divided in 5 submissions. And in order to tackle these challenges, active collaboration among citizens, scientists, entrepreneurs, and policymakers is actively being encouraged according to the so-called quadruple helix. Next slide, please. So if you look at the instruments to realize our ambitions, it has already been mentioned that the Netherlands, like India, has a very strong focus on smart e-health solutions. And we really trust that when developed and implemented in the right way, these e-health solutions can provide affordable, accessible, effective, efficient, and safe and quality healthcare, which all contributes to the mission of having vital functioning citizens against a limited financial costs. Next slide, please. So I would like to conclude my presentation with 2 examples of public-private innovations. The first one I would like to mention is Neo Kidney, which is a lightweight plug-and-play device for dialysis at home. And this initiative started 5 years ago. It was initiated by the Dutch Kidney Foundation together with a couple of health insurance companies. And more recently, also a company from Singapore has joined this initiative. And they all aim, of course, to improve the life of patients with kidney failures. And well, this new portable dialysis machine is, of course, the next step in meeting that goal. As you can see, this initiative already started in 2011, and well, we hope to that the device will be available in 2023. Next slide, please. And the final initiative that I would like to mention is the personal health train. And this personal health train aims to connect distributed health data and to create value by increasing data for citizens, healthcare, and scientific research. And the key concept of this initiative is to bring the algorithms to the data where they happen to be, rather than bringing all the data to a central place. And because of this way, the personal health train really gives controlled access to heterogeneous data sources, while at the same time also ensuring the privacy protection and the maximum engagement of individual patients and citizens. And as a prerequisite, health data is made fair. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And I think this is also one of the initiatives that was mentioned and presented last year when there was a large mission from the Netherlands to India. So most likely some of the Indian stakeholders are already involved or at least connected to this initiative. So that was my presentation, just a short overview of the Dutch landscape, including some of the public-private initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Dr. Rakesh Sarwal has to leave for a meeting right now. And Dr. Sarwal, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your valuable insights and taking time from your busy schedule to address us here today. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure being.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I would now like to request Mr. Radhakrishnan to give a brief overview of Philips India operations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Priya. And thanks Dutch Consulate as well as Next Team for inviting me for this webinar. My name is Radhakrishnan Kodakal, Senior Director for Research and Development within Philips. I've been with Philips for 20 years, 9 years in Netherlands and 11 years in India. I came back to India to set up the healthcare footprint in Pune between 2009 and 12. So as an industry representative in this panel, I would like to talk about the journey of Philips in setting up a world-class manufacturing and innovation center in India. So let's go to next slide. Yeah, so before I go deep into our setup in Pune, I would like to give an overview of Philips' footprint in India. So we have our India headquarters as well as a commercial organization based in Gurgaon, Delhi. And if you go down to south, so there in Chennai, we have our footprint for Preeti, both the R&D center as well as factory. So they make kitchen appliances. And also our global business services is located in Chennai, and this is our shared service center. And then we have our innovation campus in Bangalore, focusing on software and solutions. Bangalore is also the software COE for all Philips businesses across the world, and Bangalore has been there. Bangalore Center has been there for last 30 years. And finally, Healthcare Innovation Center in Pune, which include R&D center and factory. So let's now look at what we do in Pune in detail. Please go to the next slide. So Philips as a company currently focus on health technology, covering the full health continuum, starting from healthy living, prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and home care. The businesses are divided into 4 clusters as personal health, precision diagnosis, image-guided therapy, and connected care. So in the Healthcare Innovation Center in Pune, we have presence from both precision diagnosis cluster as well as image-guided therapy. We do research and development for surgery, C-arm, cath labs, diagnostic X-ray, CT, as well as MRI. And we produce systems and components from surgery, C-arm, as well as cath lab, ultrasound, and MRI components. The center in Pune caters to both India as well as global needs, and we ship products to more than 100 countries in the world, including Europe, US, and Japan. And Pune is one of the key sites for Philips for manufacturing as well as R&D. So let's go to our next slide. Yeah, so here I would like to give you our journey so far. So this has been exciting and rewarding journey. We started our journey in 2008, 2009 with acquisition of 2 companies in the healthcare space. One is called Alpha X-Ray Technologies and the other one is Meditronics Healthcare. They are based in Mumbai with factories in the west coast of India. The whole strategy for Philips was to really enter into the so-called value segment and as well as to this side of the market. And with the insight from these 2 local companies and also establish a world-class center to tap into the new market as well as the talent. So that was really the strategy for Philips at that time. And by the way, Philips was one of the late entrant if you compare with some of our big competitors like Siemens and GE. But we came with a big intent and agenda. So I came back to India in 2009 from Netherlands to integrate these companies and also set up the new footprint. So we have done the integration of these companies between 2009 and 10 and decided to set up the industrial and innovation footprint in Pune, which is the technology city in the west coast or west side of India. So we had inaugurated our R&D center in Pimpri, which is next to Pune in 2011, and the factory in Chakan, that is roughly 40 kilometers from the city center, in 2012. Since then, we have expanded to multiple businesses and activities. So in a couple of areas, this location is sort of the headquarters. For example, surgery C-arm, the business category is based in Pune. And for the diagnostic X-ray, the R&D headquarters is in this location. So if I look back, the key success factors are really first start with the talent. So talent for both R&D as well as manufacturing. And there is a really good talent pool in the west and also south of India. And that is due to the presence in the healthcare space by some of our competitors, and as well as pharma and other industries, and especially automotive and aerospace. And also there are good universities and engineering institutes in this area, and Pune is also called the Oxford of the East, with a lot of education institutions. And the other area is partnership with hospitals, universities, and engineering institutes. That is really critical for the success of setting up a healthcare systems development unit as well as manufacturing unit. And the third one is the supply-based ecosystem. So we have a good ecosystem in the Pune region based on automotive industry, and also in the other part of India, especially on the south side from the aerospace industry. So that gives us a good ecosystem from a supply-based perspective. And fourth one, that's the infrastructure. So we have the seaport and the airport is nearby from this location. And finally, great support from government and especially the MIDC. So we have our factory located in Maharashtra, Industrial Development Corporation location. So that has been very good, and also the infrastructure has been pretty good in this region. And it was a great journey so far, and I'm proud that this center has become one of the key locations for Philips for both product development as well as manufacturing, and the center houses now more than 1,000 engineers in the R&D plus manufacturing space, and is growing well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishnan. Thank you all for your presentation today. We will now start with the Q&A session with our speakers, moderated by Esther.
Yes, okay. So before we start, I would also like to invite the audience to send in their questions by using the chat option. Feel free to ask anything you want to the remaining speakers. We already prepared a couple of questions, and the first thing that I would like to ask is a question for Mr. Ravi. Several speakers mentioned the National Digital Health Mission, and I was wondering, Mr. Ravi, how this National Digital Health Mission can accelerate the adoption of technologies in India.
Right. Thank you, Esther, for that question. And the National Digital Health Mission was announced very recently, so I think we have a good idea of what is being planned, but it's still early stages yet. It is something that I would caveat. But this mission is actually, meant to improve the efficacy, the effectiveness, the efficiency, and transparency of healthcare service delivery in the country. So, our goal, which is, one of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, is to achieve universal health coverage. And we believe this mission will help develop the backbone that's required to support, integrated digital health in the country. So it'll bridge the existing gaps you have between various stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem, and establish through digital highways that are being established. So it has a number of buckets of under the plan. So there's the creation of a universal health ID for every individual. So that's a unique health ID that people would have. So the goal is that each person has one ID which is unique, and that will serve as a good identifier for all the digital data. There's a program for a digital doctor, there's a program for a health facility registry, and there's a program for making sure that personal health records are integrated, stored, and interoperable, sort of in a well controlled and with all importance given to digital privacy and all of that. So I think it's looking at building some core digital building blocks that are essential to healthcare. And I think once these blocks will help link the public and private health ecosystems, there'll be a lot of cloud-based services that will be possible. And also, I think the plan is to make the system accessible through fairly simple and open APIs or application interfaces. So I think many of these are essential. So today, some of the challenges in the penetration of digital health is your data issues, your interoperability of systems. How do you put the whole thing together? How do you collaborate with between different groups? And I think this is intending to bridge that gap. And if this infrastructure can be built as the way it is planned, I think that in itself is a huge boost to helping e-health expand robustly and rapidly. And I think it's really all about putting strong foundation for rapid build of e-health. And you had a slide where you clearly enunciated the advantages of e-health, and that I think can flow very quickly once this backbone is built robustly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for elaborating on this, and also give some examples of the aspects that are part of this new health mission. So this was more the Indian side. I was wondering, that's a question for Marcel Floor, if there are also any G2G initiatives that may support the Dutch-Indian collaboration, perhaps also in the field of digital health or in the field of vaccines.
Yes, thank you, Esther. Yes, we're building up a relationship. I mean, the agenda is not completely mature yet. I mean, and to a certain extent, the pandemic has thrown back us to a certain extent. What we're looking at is developing G2G cooperation in the digital areas. We'd like to explore options to use case driven to see how we can work on long-term engagement programs in which connecting the dots is the core element. Particularly focusing on interoperability. We know, and that's been reflected in the digital health mission as well. There's a lot of focus on technical interoperability, but at the same time, one of the lessons we learned in the Netherlands and also in Europe is not only about technical interoperability, but it's also what is very, very essential. It has to do with more semantics. Is the context of the information, is it completely, can it not be misinterpreted from both sides? And that is so important, because you can try to build a network on a technical basis, but if the information and the data are interpreted in wrong ways or are not filled in exactly the same way as it is intended to be, then the quality of the data will be suboptimal, and then the outcome in terms of creating one bigger health data space is even further out of reach. So it is of critical importance to focus very much on semantic interoperability as well. And so that might, for some people, might be a bit of a new area, but we think as a government we can work together on this one with India. When it, for instance, comes to the pharmaceutical domain, I touched upon the issues of dependencies, particularly when it comes to active pharmaceutical ingredients. India and the Netherlands are in exactly the same boat. I mean, we depend so much on the API and the key starting materials coming from China that we need to rebalance. And there's a global debate taking place about decoupling and resourcing, and in the end we'll have to find a new balance, and we'd like to do that with India, as being India a major partner, and at the same time having the same kind of interest. So that means that we'd like to tie up with regulatory agencies, with supervisory agencies, to see how we can work together and develop an agenda on quality, on market authorization. As you might know, the European Medicine Agency is based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is, to a certain extent, for industry outside of Europe, a stepping stone in the pharmaceutical domain. So we're working on the development of a broad agenda, G2G.
Okay, Marcel, thank you for informing us about the G2G initiatives that are currently running between India and the Netherlands. Of course, it's also interesting to learn more about the perspective at a company level. So my third question is to Ms. Radhakrishnan. I think it would be very interesting for the audience to learn more about the key learnings for Dutch companies that are looking to enter the Indian market. So if you have some do's and don'ts, some advice for Dutch entrepreneurs who would like to go to India.
Thank you. That's a good question. So I can maybe summarize into 3-4 areas. The first one is pick the right talent. So you really need to pick the right talent to be successful in India. And don't look at labor arbitrage, but look at really talent base to make a success. The second one is ecosystem. So you need to find a place where you have a good ecosystem for what you want to do. So this could be supply base, this could be hospitals, universities, etc. So that's a second aspect to which you have to really look at. So in our case, Pune was really a great location from that perspective. Third one is don't look at short term, especially in healthcare industry. It takes time before you start seeing success and making a let's say sustainable organization. So stay for long, and that's also a lessons learned from Philips. If I look at the first 2 years, we had a lot of ups and downs, and there were many discussions I had with the sponsors to see, okay, whether we will continue or not continue, but at least we had a clear strategy to stay put, and now we really see the benefit. After several years, we see that this has become one of the best centers in Philips. And finally, cross-culture bridges. So this is also a crucial element. So in this case, I myself is an example. I spent 10 years working in Netherlands, or 10 years, 8 years with Philips. So I knew in and out of how things happens in Netherlands, and also there was a good network with the people out there. So that is also very important when you set up a center in a country like India. So you need to have few good bridges to really establish the relationship between both locations. I think these are the key lessons learned from our setup.
Thank you, Mr. Korakal. So I think we are almost at the end of our session. What we will do is that we will answer any of your remaining questions via email. And I think for now it's time to conclude. And I think Ravleen is supposed to say some final concluding remarks.
Thank you so much, Esther. I would like to again reiterate our sincere thanks to all the esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable insights. I sincerely believe that the Indian healthcare sector right now is going through an inflex point, and there have been several initiatives and reforms that have been announced by the government, which was also very well covered in all our presentations, especially both by Mr. Menon as well as Mr. Sarwal, which clearly indicates that, you know, India and the Netherlands have great synergy, great opportunities, and we would love to invite all the Dutch companies to look at India, come here and you know, explore the market here. Having said that, I would also like to take the opportunity to mention and also announce the opening of the call for proposals under the Global Stars initiative of Eureka. Here you could submit your proposals under the broader scope of key enabling technologies in the healthcare, water and agriculture sector. And these collaborations are basically more on research and innovation-based projects. And for the healthcare sector, it includes digital technologies, engineering technologies, micro and nanotechnologies to tackle the challenges in the healthcare sector. And of course, projects aiming towards addressing the current pandemic of COVID are also more than welcome. The link to the call for proposals is on the screen. It would be great if you can, you know, go onto the website and all the details are mentioned in terms of what are the prerequisites. At the embassy, we all are here, Marcel, Priya, myself, we're all open to, you know, guide you through, help you. Please feel free to contact us. As Priya mentioned, we will be circulating a questionnaire, which will also have our details. So let's work together in further strengthening our relationships and taking it to the next level. Thank you once again, everybody, for all your time. And thanks, Nextim, and of course, Mr. Sarola has left, Mr. Radhakrishnan also for your participation. Thank you. Back to Priya.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Ravleen. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishnan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.